are powers on Earth too hidden to be seen, and conspiracies too vast to comprehend. For years, the world has seen fact distorted, reality manipulated, and the truth concealed. Join the Pierre Sebac podcast to uncover the real meanings behind ancient aliens and their symbolism.
Hi, this is Pierre Sebac, unlocking the keys to the mysteries. Now, today I want to talk about exotheology, and I want to talk about both its historical use and also the usage that I use the term within my book, Holographic Culture, because there is, if you like, a difference between the two ways in which the words are actually utilized. So if we go back then to the beginnings of exotheology, we can see that it's very ancient in its origin. So this, if you like, the discussion about the gods and the others and how this relates to mankind goes back a long way. Now, essentially, we can trace it back at least to Anaxagoras, which is the princely speaker. He was a philosopher within about 500 BC. He detailed the theories on panspermia, this idea that the seed of man was planted from the stars. Within occult symbolism, therefore, the grain is very important, because not only does the grain look superficially like a star, if you think about the sowing of the seed into the earth is like the stars, each star is a seed. And so the seed has this connotation, and again, the fiery seed again goes back to the star system Sirius. So therefore, Sirius are seen to be the seeders of worlds within the occult tradition. Now, exotheology is also details separately a branch of Christian theology, and I think it's useful to look at some of these ideas both in terms of religiously and philosophically. Exotheology as a discussion or a discourse, it gained its momentum in the late 1960s. Now, specifically, exotheology, it relates to the hypothetical investigation of theological questions, and these questions pertain to the religious dimension, to the theological dimension, in terms of theological questions, and these questions revolve around ideas such as the redemption of non-earthly beings. So, for example, from a Christian perspective, Christians believe that Christ died on the cross for the sins of humanity, but these questions also, from an exotheological perspective, are wider. So theologians themselves began to argue in the 1960s, did Christ just die on the cross for humans? Or if aliens exist, did he die for all life forms within the known universe? Or do all different, for examples, if you've got different alien beings, did God manifest in different forms, and was he crucified, or did he die for different life forms? Or is it that these life forms don't have sin like mankind, and therefore they didn't need a redeemer to save them? So these are all hypothetical questions which are brought into the mix within exotheology within the 1960s. Now, again, I would argue that many of these questions are very superfluous. The study often covers it very inane questions such as are alien life forms exempt from salvation? If sin is transferred to humans only, can alien creatures be justified through faith? And I think that these type of questions are totally non-useful in terms of the greater impacts of what exotheology and the discussion of alien beings, how they relate to the development of religion. So I'm saying that this is really non-helpful for the mature discussion of aliens and theology, and how the two often combine together, and how man's understanding of different alien beings and different factions, how they have informed theologically the religious tradition. So I think, therefore, exotheology, certainly from the 1960s, there's very little merit in these discussions, and it's very much of a distraction. So, when I refer to exotheology within a holographic culture, I'm very much referring to the etymological usage of the word. Now, the word exo means outside of, and theology is the study of God. So we're dealing here with the outside study of God, and we're talking about here about the extra dimension, or the alien dimension, or that which is unseen. So we're really talking about the occult tradition. Now, in essence, the use of exotheology is employed to designate the ancient alien thesis. And in other words, I'm talking about here the extraterrestrial controlled governments. And I've done a short video on extraterrestrial controlled governments, so if you want to refer to that, then please have a look at that video. But essentially, that we have what is essentially a parallel society. The parallel society is this open secret between human and non-human angels, the cherubim, which are proto-humans, and the seraphim, which are non-humans. And this essentially feeds into the occult tradition, or the impartation of knowledge between alien and human angels. And this also is an extension of the parallel society, which is the ship of state, which is demarcated between the upper and the lower house, or between heaven and earth. So the exopolitical theology is very much tied into the ship of state, and it's also tied into the veneration of angelic vessels as well. In English we would say worship. Ship in this context is to venerate an angelic vessel. Again, religion relegate more a vessel. So these are important ideas which are playing out. And again, within the Greek, Nos, which is a ship, is based upon the temple precinct of Nos, which is a temple. So the relationship between the temple, which again is correlated to the ship of state and government, and the partition between heaven and earth, and the tying together of heaven and earth, which relates to the tying together, or the grafting together of the bloodline, which is personified as kingship, lordship, which is this grafted bloodline, which is essentially alludes to the Ben Sira, a son of a boat. A son of a boat in this context is Malak, an angel, or Malak, a sailor, denoting Melech, a king. Kingship. So the coming together, the drawing together, the stitching together of bloodlines. These are core exotheological ideas which are found within the original discourse of exotheology. Now, if we want to look at relatively early examples of exotheological teaching within the modern world, we can look no further than Giordano Bruno. He was writing around the 1550s to 1600s, around that time. Now, he hypothesized an eternal universe, and he also argued about multiple populated worlds in his explosive book On the Infinite Universe and Worlds. Now, this was an extremely controversial publication. It was so controversial that he was excommunicated by the Roman Catholic, Calvinist, and even the Lutheran churches as well. So pretty much even the heretics were disassociating themselves from Bruno, and he obtained his information from the Jesuits. This didn't just come from anywhere. He was educated by the Jesuits. So in other words, Bruno was a very early whistleblower about the parallel society and about these eternal worlds, in which there is this interaction between aliens and beings who are like ourselves, physically look human, which are part of the anthropos, but also beings which are non-human, and how they work together, but there are also these political tensions between these beings as well, and this is very much a part of the discourse of the dialectic. So Bruno was excommunicated, and he was arrested, and he was executed by the Inquisition. So in the 1600s. Now, it's interesting, because if we wanted to look also at within modern theology about this exotheological symbolism, we can go and look at the justification of faith, which is the redemption of sin. And in my book Holographic Culture, I have an example of what I describe as exotheological and cytological symbolism. Now, cytology is the study of a vessel, an angelic vessel. In this case, we're talking about things such as containers, such as baskets, lamps. These are all examples of angelic vessels, but these vessels play into the scatological tradition or the depiction of ships. So, for example, I have in my book, I've drawn out, which is a pamphlet, and it shows a church, and it has the scales, which is the idea of the justification of faith, this idea of redemption, that Christ died for the sins of mankind. But if we look at these scales, they look superficially like flying saucers. Now, within the occult tradition, this is done on purpose because, as I said before, there is this relationship between the temple and the ship or worship, and these vessels were described as wheels. They are the opening wheels. They are also described as flying shields. So the scale in this respect are used as cytological markers. They're used to denote the opening wheels, and the opening wheels in this respect are related to the apocalypse. Apocalyptic, which is to unveil or to reveal. In modern parlance, we would say that this is disclosure, the disclosure of alien life, the same disclosure that Bruno was trying to talk about. Now, the symbol of the scales in the Christian respect, or in the modern Christian respect, would be the judgment, if you like, of mankind by the angels and their angelic hosts, which plays into the disclosure. Now, so we can see, therefore, that that the scales, again, is playing into exotheological ideas between angels and men, and the relationship between the ship of state, which is enacted upon or is reflected both within the temples, which is symbolically a boat, or the governments, which are also a type of boat, as also with the dock of law as well, which is also a type of boat. It's all, again, within financial law as well. We have mercantile law. So we have boat iconography, which is interrelated to the scaphological tradition, which is the study of these angelic vessels within the religious tradition. So essentially, that is theology. It comprises of a number of ideas. As I said before, it's a number of ideas between whether it's the early ideas about panspermia, or whether it's going into the more modern usage in terms of these very redundant ideas about whether aliens are justified through faith or they are not. And again, it goes into the philosophical traditions and the religious traditions of Bruno, and Bruno talking about these multiple worlds and the interaction between human and non-human entities. So that is exotheology. So if you've enjoyed this video, then please give it a thumbs up. Please share my videos around. It's great to be talking to everyone again. This is Pierre Sabak. Let's try and make this a better world. Thank you very much.